Welcome, everybody. We're just going to take a couple of minutes for everybody to get online, and really pleased you're all here today. My name is Wendy, and I'm from the Diversity Institute at Toronto Metropolitan University, but we work very closely with the Digital Media Zone and others who are going to be talking today as well about the great opportunities for women entrepreneurs. I'm just watching as the number of participants climbs, and when it stops moving, we'll begin. '23, 24. We used to always talk about normal time and Ryerson time. Ryerson time was always 10 minutes after the hour as people ran from class to class. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes. I see 28 gone. Some people may come in and join us in progress, which is great. But as I said, my name is Wendy Sucure, and I lead the Diversity Institute at the Toronto Metropolitan University, as well as the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. And before we get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that we're all gathering here in Toronto or online in various other communities on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples. And here in Toronto, it's the traditional territory of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. And I think many of you are aware that the university, formerly known as Ryerson, is going through a very intensive process around truth and reconciliation. And part of that has involved changing our name to Toronto Metropolitan University. At the Diversity Institute, we're very committed to ensuring that the voices of Indigenous peoples are heard, recognizing the history of genocide and exclusion, and working on a variety of different projects and programs with Indigenous peoples, led by Indigenous peoples, for Indigenous peoples, to advance economic opportunities and inclusion, including programs focused on Indigenous entrepreneurs and women Indigenous entrepreneurs, and programs in the far north, and so on. We also have a lot of programs targeting other specific equity-deserving groups. We have programs for Black youth, we have programs for newcomers, we have programs for women living in poverty, and so on and so forth. So just wanted to acknowledge that at this university, at the Digital Media Zone, and at many of the, in many of the programs we're going to talk about today, there is a real commitment to an intersectional perspective on women, recognizing that women come from different backgrounds, have different identities, and some which we will be talking about more today. So I'm going to give you just a bit of a overview of what we do at the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. Really pleased to be included and having an opportunity. Make sure that you're aware of some of the supports and services that we curate and provide. And then I'll hand it over to the DMZ to talk about the amazing opportunities they provide. And then we'll have a bit of a panel discussion. So I will try to share my screen. And I'm hoping I am successful in starting my slide presentation. Can everyone see? Hearing no one shrieking at me, I assume that you can see it. And I've been at this university since I think before every single person on this call was born. I started in the School of Information Technology Management, which had previously other names, and now I'm a professor in the Entrepreneurship and Strategy program. Along the way, I was the Vice President of Research and Innovation, so I was very, very involved of the work in the digital media zone and in fact incubators across the country. So I'm very committed to the work that we're going to talk about today. The Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub is a program that was funded by the Government of Canada as part of the Women Entrepreneurship Strategy, which is I think now an $8 billion investment to really try to level the playing field for women entrepreneurs. We have hubs across the country. We do research. We try to understand the experiences of women entrepreneurs. We look at where the gaps are in services, where the barriers are, and we work really hard to translate that research into policies and programs and supports for women entrepreneurs. Lots of research reports. For those of you who have that inclination. But we also have a sharing portal called the Ask Give platform, where you can go on and ask for information about where to get money, how to export to Poland, whatever the questions you might have. And there are about 2,000 other women on the platform who will very often volunteer to support you or help. We also have lots and lots of information on our website. And while we don't provide a lot of direct supports to entrepreneurs, we do have some. What we're really focused on is trying to strengthen the ecosystem, try to strengthen all of the pieces that are available, whether it's help finding customers, whether it's access to financing, access to grants, access to procurement opportunities, and so on, across the country to advance opportunities. And happy to answer any questions. But we really do take a holistic systems view and try to understand, if we look at the universities and we look at entrepreneurship training, are the programs attractive to women? Are the examples that are being used inspiring to women? And we know that those are barriers. We know that financial institutions, for instance, often put in place barriers that make it less likely for women entrepreneurs to access funding. And if they're Indigenous or they're Black or they're newcomers, the barriers pile up. We know that often organizations say that they're going to provide procurement or supply opportunities targeting women, but then they may make it so complicated, no women apply, no women submit RFPs. So we're working on all the different pieces that come together to present barriers. We're working at changing stereotypes, celebrating success, changing policies, and we're also working on training, capacity building, and so on. And I won't have time to talk a lot about this in detail, but there's lots more information you can access. So one of our biggest findings in the first couple of years we were in operation was that women account for only about 16% of small, medium enterprises, incorporated businesses with employees, have fewer than 500 employees. But women account for 37% of Canadians who are self-employed. And that may mean that they have a side hustle. That may mean they have a full-time job as a consultant, but have never incorporated their business and so on. And so one of the things we're really interested in is, how do you take people from self-employment to leading small, medium enterprises? When is incorporation appropriate? Why do we care? Because when you incorporate your business, you have more opportunities to use other people's money to grow your business. And you also have more access to programs, supports, and so on. So, that's something that later stage organizations have to think about. We also know that women-led businesses tend to be micro businesses. with fewer than 20 employees. And some of that is through choice. I think we have to challenge the assumption that everyone wants to be a mogul and run a multinational organization. Lots of people just want a business that will support them and a small group of people and give them satisfaction. So we have to be very careful about assuming that entrepreneurs are all one thing. And that's very important to us in trying to understand where bias creeps into the system. One of the things we know, for example, is often a barrier is that there tends to be a real preoccupation with technology and with technology startups and with technology entrepreneurs. And that's important. And we work really hard to celebrate success in the tech sector. But it's also very important to understand that entrepreneurs can do all kinds of different things, and that innovation is not just about making a new widget or application or a piece of hardware or software. It's also about doing things differently. It's also about new products and services. It's also about thinking of new initiatives and how to change things to advance the green economy or social equality or end poverty, education, advance education, and so on. Or it's about thinking about new processes. So we take a very broad definition of innovation and entrepreneurship, and we find once you broaden the definition of innovation and entrepreneurship, more women will say, oh, maybe I am an entrepreneur. And one example is when I used to be the Vice President of Research and Innovation. If we organized a session on entrepreneurship, we would get mostly students out of engineering and some out of management. If we organized a workshop on change making, we would get students from arts and social science and social workers, nurses, and so on. And so the framing and how we think about entrepreneurship is really important. And my view is, if you want to drive change, if you want to create a new product, if you have an idea you want to realize, you're an entrepreneur. And so we do a lot of research, tons of research, more research than you would read in your lifetime, but it really addresses a number of different angles on entrepreneurship, as well as I mentioned, looking at the experience of different communities. We know, for example, Indigenous women entrepreneurs are overrepresented relative to women of other backgrounds. They tend to export more, but they also tend to be smaller and are much, much less likely to incorporate than, for example, other entrepreneurs. We know that newcomer entrepreneurs more likely to export, more likely to have really interesting ideas about how to serve specific markets, and so on and so forth. So there are different dimensions of identity. And in the current environment, Canada is becoming more diverse. In Toronto, half the population was born outside of Canada. And another quarter, like me, are the children of immigrants. That creates huge opportunities, both in terms of products and services, but also the talent pool that we have to make sure we access. And that's why we work really hard to challenge the assumptions about what an entrepreneur is. You do a Google image search, this is what you get. Mostly men, mostly white men, mostly white men in tech. And yet we know from the research that we've done that entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes across sectors, and we're working really hard to celebrate that. Who thinks of, for example, Celine Dion as an entrepreneur? She's worth $700 million. Kylie Jenner, first billionaire at the age of 20. But often women entrepreneurs are not included in what we think about because they're in health and beauty, they're in food, or they're in other sectors. And I realize I'm quickly running out of time, so I want to wrap up, but a couple more points I'd like to make before I hand it over to the DMZ. And one is that we really have to work with organizations, and we've worked with the DMZ, we've worked with the university, we've worked with banks, we work with Starbucks to really think about where they may be putting barriers up. where they could be providing opportunities. With Starbucks, for example, one of the biggest things that came out of their EDI strategy, equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy, was the importance of making shelf space available for women entrepreneurs and diverse entrepreneurs. We run lots of training programs, and you can get on our mailing list and invited to all these things. I mentioned incorporation. We work with lots of different agencies. I mentioned the sharing platform, which you're all invited to join, and lots and lots and lots of other tools and supports that you may find useful along the way. So thank you very much for your time, and over to you, DMZ.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Wendy. Good afternoon, and thank you so much to the Diversity Institute and the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub for inviting us here today to talk to you about the DMZ and the different ways that we help entrepreneurs such as yourselves. My name is Rose Kamari, and I'm the head of startup recruitment here at the DMZ, and I'm joined today by my wonderful colleagues, Darren and Justine. Let me just share my screen here. Share. Perfect. Can everyone see that? Amazing. So Darren is on the recruitment team with myself, and Justine is one of our amazing program leads and specializes in our Women Founders programming. And we're all very excited to be here today and tell you a little bit more about our programs. So the DMZ is a world's leading incubator, and our mission really is to change entrepreneurs' lives. And we do this by equipping the next generation of entrepreneurs, of tech entrepreneurs, get the tools and skills that they need to build, launch, and scale highly impactful startups so that they can become world-class businesses. And we do this by providing our startups with curated coaching through our diverse variety of different mentors that work with us. We provide them connections to customers. We provide access to capital. And we also have a great community of diverse and highly engaged founders, alumni, industry leaders, and more. So the DMZ is dedicated to supporting the next generation of entrepreneurs. And our focus is on people rather than products, even though we are a startup incubator. And we believe that a diverse group of individuals with different backgrounds, different lived experiences, and different perspectives is really the key to driving business success. And so we focus on working with the best and the brightest entrepreneurs, and we're committed to fostering an environment where diversity is not only celebrated but encouraged. And we believe that by supporting a wide range of people and a wide range of ideas, we can help create a more dynamic and successful business community. So this is something that we're really proud of. Over the last few years, we have been rated as the top university-based business incubator in the world, ranked by UBI Global. So the DMZ is part of Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly known as Ryerson University. And so this affiliation is how we've received this ranking. I'll now pass it over to Darren.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about our history. 13 years ago, the DMZ was started when a student at the university actually had a business idea, but wasn't necessarily sure who or where to go with that idea. As a result, in 2010, the university administration launched the first iteration of the DMZ. It was more of an informal student co-working space where, folks from the university could go if they had a business idea, and they would come together and receive help and support to bring those ideas to life. At that time, the acceptance rate was 100%. So since then, the DMZ has pivoted a few times, and although at the beginning we only catered to students at the university, we've since expanded and now accept startups from all over the world. One of our most recent pivots was due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to this, we were exclusively an in-person operation, mostly accepting startups who were physically able to come to our space to receive support. In early 2020, when everybody had to pack up and work from home, it gave us the opportunity to actually rethink how we're delivering service and supporting the entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. And we now operate using an equity model and allow folks to work from anywhere, accessing our programs and services in a manner that fits today's climate. This is when we really start to grow our reach and develop relationships and partnerships with various tech ecosystems all over the world. The startups that come to us now are run by full-time founders and are ready to hit the ground running and change the world. Our values. Our values are extremely important to us at the DMZ. They're certainly ingrained in our culture and drive everything that we do. So number one is equity over everything. We understand that not everyone has the same starting line, and this is why we also don't provide every founder with the same kind of support. What this means is that we work with each founder individually and take the time to listen to their goals, obstacles, and hear and understand what they need from us. We're then able to provide them with the right type of support. What support could look like for each founder could change throughout their time at the DMZ, depending on their progression within their entrepreneurial journey and what their next set of milestones and goals might look like. We want to ultimately level the playing field because this is the type of equity that matters the most. Our second value, founders first. Again, this is where we focus on people and not products. We're looking to create and help launch a next generation of great founders and not just startups. Our programming and support offered is based on what we hear from founders and what they need. With that being said, the founders shape the DMZ of today and tomorrow. Last but not least is to be great. Being great reminds us not to settle. We need to do more than just get through the day. Setting the bar high, conquering every moment, we're continuously working towards propelling us forward to that greatness. We always aim to go above and beyond, making the impossible possible. And this is a type of spirit that we foster at the DMZ, whether it's with the founders that we bring into the space or the entire team that works internally here. This community that we created is, surrounded by like-minded, ambitious individuals that creates an energy that is truly contagious. Our impact. So all of this community that we speak about the last 13 years, what have we been able to accomplish? When we speak about the history of the DMZ, it's helpful to put it into perspective using these figures. Over the last 13 years, our startups have collectively raised over $1.95 billion. That is correct, over 1.95 billion. The first billion was actually raised through the first 10 years of our operations. And this is something that we always like to highlight to, founders that want to come into our space, because it's incredible to note that over the last 3 years, we've almost raised that second billion. So it really points out that we're scaling up and increasing our impact here at the DMZ. We have over 3,000 VCs and angels in our global network. We do have a significant reach in the tech ecosystem here in Canada and globally. And we've incubated over 770 plus companies at the DMZ, and over 1,000 startups have benefited from our program globally. And all of this has created over 4,800 jobs. So we're quite proud of the work that we've done and the work that we continue to do.
Thank you, Darren. So I want to touch a little bit more on our global impact. So we have become a global incubator, as Darren mentioned, and now actually operate in over 10 different countries around the world. Some of these places that we've opened up shop include Tokyo, Cairo, the Caribbean, India, Vietnam, South Korea, and a few others I can't remember off the top of my head. We've also reopened our New York City office, which we had open prior to the pandemic, but had to close as a result of the pandemic. But we reopened that a couple months ago, which is very exciting. It's located right outside of the Bay Street Bull, and this really gives our founders and alumni companies an amazing location if they want to meet any prospective investors, customers, and the like. Our global offices also give us an opportunity to help different emerging incubators around the world to develop, implement, and grow their own programs by helping them adopt that global mindset while also building on the specific strengths of their local economies to help founders in their locations as well. Further to that, our global operation also allows our startups here in our Toronto headquarters to take advantage of this global network and leverage these existing relationships to break into these new markets. So one of our goals at the DMZ is to support the full entrepreneurial journey. So this is from when a student is just conceptualizing a business idea all the way to a revenue generating venture backable tech startup who's ready to go global. Our student-facing programs and our Launchpad program are for entrepreneurs who have a business idea but aren't exactly sure where to start. And so these programs target aspiring entrepreneurs. Our Bootcamp program, otherwise known as our pre-incubator program, targets entrepreneurs looking to validate their idea. And our incubator program is for startups who are at the pre-seed seed stage of their business and are looking to scale and go global. Our core program is the incubator program, and everything else acts as sort of like a pipeline to the incubator, where eligibility and acceptance is based on the stage of the startup. One thing to note is that the pre-incubator program, the Launchpad program, these aren't necessarily prerequisites required to enter into the incubator program, but rather these are just additional means of support that we have for founders, entrepreneurs, to be able to take advantage of while they get to the stage where they could potentially be eligible to enter into the incubator program. So on top of the general programming offered within our Launchpad, Bootcamp, and Incubator programs, we do provide an additional layer of support for our women founders and our Black founders. These aren't separate programs, but rather an additional they provide additional resources and support services for founders in these groups. And Justine will touch a little bit more on our stream-specific programming later on in the presentation. So the DMZ is sector agnostic, meaning that we accept startups from all industries. Some of the main industries that our startups have operated in are included on this slide here. As a tech incubator, however, our main focus is on SaaS companies or software as a service within any of these industries. Most of the startups that we also do end up accepting into our program are B2B SaaS companies. This is generally the kind of startup that helps significantly with scaling and venture backability, which is ultimately the goal here at the DMZ for startups who go through our programs. So now I'll be going a little bit more in depth into our main program. So as I mentioned, our Launchpad program is part of our founder development programming intended to help those aspiring, emerging entrepreneurs master the basic foundational entrepreneurial skills that they need to ideate a business idea and to start exploring that solution. So unlike our other programs, which do require a tech focus, our Launchpad program is open to anyone, anywhere in the world, and is offered year-round. This is an asynchronous program, which founders can complete at their own pace, on their own time. And it's very similar to an online learning module. And another great feature is that the Launchpad program is free and accessible to anyone really who wants to learn and gain those basic entrepreneurial skills. And members who do sign up for the Launchpad program are also invited to join different events where they can meet Launchpad entrepreneurs, whether it be virtual or in person if anyone is in the area. And there's also additional virtual workshops held on a monthly cadence where our team goes specifically into the different topics that are covered during the program. And we go into a little bit more depth and allow opportunities for entrepreneurs to ask more questions. So next up is our Bootcamp program, also known as our pre-incubator program. So this is for founders who have an early MVP established and are looking to fine tune and validate their business idea. We use this program to help founders build the right roadmap that they need to get market traction and the right validation in order to hopefully enter into our incubator program upon graduating from the Bootcamp program. This Bootcamp program is not intended to be a standalone program, and the ultimate goal of the Bootcamp program is to help prepare startups to get the right validation and get to the right stage they need to enter into the incubator. So throughout the Bootcamp program, we offer a variety of programming, workshops covering different topics such as entrepreneurship, financial planning, taxation, sales, grant opportunities, HR, staffing, and a lot more. Accepted startups also get access to one-on-one coaching sessions with our EIRs, which stands for experts in residence. We have close to 30 different EIRs who work at the DMZ. These are subject matter experts who help startups with one-on-one coaching, tactical support to help them get the training that they need. For our Bootcamp program, the DMZ asks for a 2.5% stake in the form of options in the startups who join this program. Now, the equity that we take really just means that we're highly invested in the success of our startups, and we do whatever we need to help make sure that these startups succeed. And founders can also rest assured that we have their best interests in mind and use whatever resources we have to help make sure that they do well. And the DMZ essentially acts as an extension of the startups team when they're with us and throughout the duration of the program. Furthermore, 100% of the equity that we do collect goes back to the university and helps provide grants and additional programming to equity-seeking groups or in the community. So the DMZ Incubator is our flagship program. This is an 18-month program focused on growth and scaling. So this program is also very heavily curated, helping founders solve specific problems that their startup might be facing. And so throughout this program, startups essentially have unlimited access to all of our experts in residence throughout the whole 18-month duration of the program. These are the experts that I've mentioned who can be available on an as-needed basis. And the focus at this stage is generally around things like go-to-market strategy, gaining media exposure, preparing for funding rounds, global expansion, or whatever the startup might need to reach their specific goals and milestones. Providing access to capital is one of the biggest methods in which we help startups in our incubator program. So founders receive dedicated support from our investor relations team and learn how to develop a fundraising strategy. They get help with pitch preparation. We provide introductions to investors. We have our own angel investors program, and also have a network of over 3,000 VCs, as Darren mentioned, in our network. Upon entry into the incubator program as well, startups get $10,000 in grant funding. This is non-diluted, with opportunities to secure an additional $15,000 in non-dilutive grant funding throughout the remainder of the 18 months. Our incubator program also has our DMZ Connect program. This is where we provide access to customers through one-on-one introductions. We help startups with developing customized sales playbooks and provide different tailored growth opportunities through strategic partnerships. Another really cool and exciting perk is our startup legal support program. This is where startups get access to free in-house legal services, providing support with things like incorporation documents, stock option plans, employer agreements, shareholder agreements, legal research, contract review, and a lot of other things. We actually launched this program just last year, and since then our startups have saved close to $200,000 in legal savings. So very useful program and very popular among our startups. So this might sound like a lot to navigate, but when startups do join the DMZ, they get assigned a DMZ program lead, which essentially acts as a liaison between the startup and all of the different support services and helps with navigating their journey while they're here with us. So in exchange for receiving these services, the startups who join the incubator program give us a 2.5% equity stake in their company in the form of common shares. Any startup who started from the Bootcamp program and is now joining the incubator doesn't have to give any additional equity. It would just be that the 2.5% that we would take in the form of options in the Bootcamp would get converted to common shares upon entry into the incubator program. Now I'll pass it on to my colleague, Justine, who will talk about our Women Founders programming in more detail.
Thank you, Rose, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Our Women Founders stream, as Rose briefly mentioned before in the slides, is an additional layer of support on top of all of the regular support that you get in all of our programs, Launchpad, Bootcamp, and Incubator. This extra layer of support is for women identifying founders. And what does it look like? We have monthly women founder pitch hours, for example. Just yesterday, we had Sarah Wilson from Panache Ventures come in, listen to all of our women founders pitch and give feedback. We have monthly women founder peer-to-peer sessions. We have extra legal support from one of our corporate partners, Tories LLP. And then we have additional intros to some of our corporate partners and some of our investors. Next slide. So on top of all of that additional support, we have some really exciting women identified founder initiatives coming up. The first would be the DMZ Women of the Year Award. We ran this Women of the Year Award last year and it was super successful. So we've decided to run it again. Applications do close, or nominations close on this Sunday, January 29th. So if you have a friend, colleague, manager that you would like to nominate, that you think is making waves in the tech scene, please do submit a nomination by this Sunday. You can find the nomination page on this website below, dmz.to/womenfounders. Our next one is our upcoming Women Founders Summit. This is the first time that we'll be running this summit. It's going to take place on March 1st here at the DMZ in person. If you are a women founder working in tech that would like to apply to pitch at this summit, we are going to be choosing 10 women identifying founders to pitch at this summit for 50 angel investors. These angel investors are a part of a network called the Firehood, which probably a lot of you have heard of. It's an angel investment firm that specifically invests in women identified founders. So please do, I think the deadline to apply to pitch is February 3rd. So you can go to the website at the bottom again and apply there to pitch. And actually something that's not listed on this slide here that I think might be of interest is we run quarterly Women in Tech breakfasts with BDC. Our next one is next Thursday, February 2nd. It's usually a very popular event. The RSVPs may be closed by now. So what I'll do is I'll put my email in the chat below. Email me specifically if you'd like an invite. At this event, at this specific one, we're going to be having a panel of women founders speaking about sort of lessons learned when you're transitioning from maybe like corporate or even being self-employed to running a product-focused business. So yeah, I'll put my email in the chat below and just ping me if the RSVPs are closed, and I'll add you to the list if it's of interest. And with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Rose.
Thank you so much, Justine. So I'm just going to go over our criteria for eligibility into our programs, just so you have a little bit more detail. As I mentioned, the Launchpad program is open to anyone who's willing to learn, really, for aspiring entrepreneurs. So if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, or if you know any aspiring entrepreneurs, please do direct them to our Launchpad program. It's a really great resource. Our bootcamp program is for SaaS startups who have an early MVP and are seeking to gain additional market traction and validation. Having innovative technology is really important. So that's definitely a requirement for the DMZ. Also, having a driven and coachable team is really important. We are a service-based program, so it has to be a team who's willing to work with different coaches and mentors throughout their time here with us. There needs to be at least one full-time founder, as well as an in-house technical lead or a CTO. This may or may not be the same person as the CTO. It really depends on the structure and size of the startup. And our incubator program has all of the same criteria, with the main difference being that the startup already has to have proven market traction and validation, and are now looking to scale and grow their startup. Here's the quick overview of the application process. We have an online application, which you can fill out. Once submitted, our programs team will do an initial review of your application. And if there's a potential fit, you'll be invited to a pitch meeting where you will present your startup and answer some questions from the team. For startups who are a better fit for our bootcamp program, you'll be issued an offer to the program following this initial pitch screening stage. For startups who are more advanced and would like to join our incubator program, there will be additional technical and business due diligence meetings to dive deeper into your startup. Once these have all been completed and passed, startups will receive an offer to join the incubator program. So our upcoming deadlines are on the slide here. So we're actively recruiting right now for our incubator program. The deadline for that is on February 15th for an expected start in March. And our bootcamp program, we're going to be starting to do monthly intake starting April. That will, and it'll be recurring monthly from then on. So please do apply to the bootcamp program now if you're ready. If you're not ready just yet, you have opportunities to apply monthly starting April. Thank you, everyone. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have now.
Thanks so much. And it's great to see where DMZ has gone since we created it. I also, having looked at who's on the participant list, we've got a lot of really experienced entrepreneurs, as well as folks who run other incubators and accelerators. And so I thought it was worth noting that this session was focusing on the digital media zone, which, as its name suggests, DMZ is primarily tech focused. But the DMZ is part of a much more elaborate, well-developed network of incubators across the country. So we created, for example, the INC network, which stands for Incubate Innovate Network of Canada. And that includes Venture Labs in BC, Creative Destruction Lab in Halifax at Dalhousie, Calgary, and many, many more. So in addition to that international network that was mentioned of the DMZ sites, there's also a very well-established network of incubators and accelerators across the country, including ones that focus on very specific sectors. So for example, Foodpreneur, which is designed specifically for people who are focused on developing food and some beauty products. L, which is at York University, has a much broader focus than just technology. So I just wanted to be sure, for those of you who signed up and are tuning in, that in addition to the kinds of services and programs the DMZ offers, which have been presented today. We're more than happy to connect you with incubators and accelerators that may address your particular needs. So just wanted to flag that, because one of our first questions, there's an anonymous question, then there's a couple of follow-up questions on support for non-tech ventures and the likelihood that non-tech ventures would be accepted into the DMZ, as well as support for non-binary identifying entrepreneurs. So maybe someone can talk a little bit about the network of zones and what services are provided for folks who are outside of the tech sector. Rose, do you want to kick it off?
For sure. Thank you so much, Wendy. Yeah, absolutely. So the university actually has 10 different zones, the DMZ being one of them. We do have a zone learning network here at the university and do things like co-zoning as well, where a startup might join more than one zone if they have the right eligibility, or maybe just one zone. We have a science discovery zone, we have our legal innovation zone, we have a fashion zone, we have a transmedia zone, science discovery zone. Thank you, Catherine, for sharing the link. But yes, there's a variety of different zones at the university. Not all of them are tech focused. So there may be a fit for you depending on your specific startup or company that you're working on, or your business idea. And there's a lot of different support services provided. A lot of most others, I think, none of the other zones take equity in startups as well. So if you're not someone who's willing to give up any sort of equity, that might be something that you're interested in as well.
Thanks so much. I hope that answers the question. We really see this as a start of conversation, and there's also, of course, the new Brampton zone, which is designed for later stage startups for the most part. We have strong connections with Mars and the Creative Destruction Labs and some of the new initiatives emerging at other post-secondary institutions, as well as some of the privately run incubators and accelerators. So please, if you have interest, be sure to follow up with us directly, and we're happy to share more information. So the next question from Brooke is, when is the next incubator application intake?
Yeah, really good question, Brooke. So our incubator does 2 cohorts a year, every 6 months. So the one following this one in March will be September. So generally September and March of every year, we do an intake, with the applications generally being due a month prior to that intake.
Thanks so much. And Ida Slavato asked a really good question, whether or not we could post information on other incubators and accelerators. And I think that's a really good follow-up item. So after the session, you'll get a follow-up survey, and we'll take a little bit of time and put together that map of some of the other services and supports, because I noticed Patrice Mousseau was here, and of course she's a phenomenal entrepreneur who created Sataya Organics products out of BC. So there may be other supports and services that are more aligned to where she is in her Dragon's Den survivor mode. So I'm wondering if there are other comments and questions. So I'm looking. And I don't see anything else, but I know that there are people online, like I saw Manel Kadar is here, who runs an incubator, several incubators with Scatting Court, and has worked on a number of youth-focused programs. I also noticed that Kara Thorkelson, who's one of our Indigenous outreach managers with WEKH based in Calgary, is here. And I noticed Teresa Singh, I think, who has been doing lots of great work in this space for almost as long as me, is also here. So I'd really encourage, if you don't have a question, folks might want to add comments or suggestions, please feel free to do that as well.
I love seeing all that diversity and folks from all over the country really being here with us today. And one of the things that we like to do as well at the DMZ is to meet all of these different people from across the country to possibly establish cross-promotional relationships or referral networks for our founders. So if someone comes to the DMZ and they might not be the best fit for us, knowing the different options that we might be able to send them to would be really advantageous for them. So if anyone here would like to connect with Darren or myself, please do reach out. We would love to have a chat and see if there's any opportunities for additional collaboration or even referring founders and entrepreneurs within our networks.
Yeah, and I think that's really critical because so many entrepreneurs, we know from the research that one of the biggest issues is wayfinding. And if someone comes in the door and they're told, no, you don't fit, as opposed to, please come in, we're not the right place for you, but let us do a warm introduction somewhere else. That's so important, so helpful, and can really change the trajectory of someone's path. And that's part of the reason why things like the iInc network and some of the other connections in the ecosystem are so important. I was just recently at a meeting with John McRitchie and FedDev and others, and around the table there were representatives. It was Southern Ontario primarily, but Seneca College, Humber College, Centennial, York, University of Toronto, Waterloo, Sheridan, etc. And everybody increasingly is working together and trying to refer people back and forth. And that's hugely different from the situation 10 years ago when we started doing this work. So just continuing to monitor the Q&A. And so Fable is asking, how do we reach out? So I'm happy to put my email in the chat, and maybe others on the panel can as well. I have a new address. I don't know what it is. So don't tell anyone I gave you my old Ryerson email. But I would just encourage, maybe Catherine can post contact links that folks can follow up with if they want one-on-ones. And as Catherine has noted, there will be a post-event email with all the links, resources, copies of the PowerPoints, et cetera, and she knows what my new email address is, so she has posted it in the chat. Please don't report me. Other comments or questions? Okay, so Sandra has asked a question, do you work in conjunction with other universities? And I can answer it, but maybe Rose, you'd like to talk about that?
On the DMZ side, we do not work in conjunction with other universities, but we do sometimes send our startups to other universities if there's an event or a different opportunity for them to take advantage of. But these are not established partnerships.
So what I would refer you all to is the link that Catherine posted on the Innovation and Impact Network of Canada. That's actually not I don't think that's the correct one. The iInc network, yes, it is, sorry, apologies. The iInc network, as I said, is a network that Ryerson, when it was Ryerson, established which links the incubators. And John McRitchie, who's the Associate Vice President responsible for the digital media zones, is the connection there. So that links Dalhousie University, Laval. I'm not sure if one of the Ottawa universities is part of it. Queen's is for sure. Memorial University. Obviously, we are, I think, along with North Forge in Winnipeg, which is affiliated with the University of Manitoba, University of Calgary, Simon Fraser University. Those are the ones that I know off the top of my head. But even beyond that, there are informal connections with, for example, Polytechnique in Montreal and so on. So we will put all that information together for you with the appropriate connections after the call. And thank you very much for the question. And I see Gadir's name, but I don't actually see another question. So apologies if I missed that. Just wondering if anyone else in the audience wanted to comment on program services supports that they're aware of.
Sorry, I think Gadir was asking about whether the DMZ is for tech founders. So we are for tech founders exclusively, except for our Launchpad program, which is open to anyone. But if you are looking for a different venture, I think you mentioned social founders. We do have a social venture zone as one of the zones here at Toronto Metropolitan. So please do check their website as well. They might have what you're looking for.
Yes, and I'll also mention, Simon Fraser has a social venture zone with a different title. There's the Center for Social Innovation, which is an incubator accelerator. So lots and lots of opportunities there. And it's so important to recognize that social innovation, social entrepreneurship is a critical part of what we're talking about. The other kind of support for people who are focused on the sustainable development goals would be through groups like formerly called CEO, now Corrales, which has a network of activators who donate, and funding is then made available to a small number of social ventures each year, between $50,000 and $100,000, and they're coached and supported and so on. Lots and lots of programs, competitions, support systems, and incubators that are more geared towards those in the social innovation space. And I see that Cara has pitched in to say she doesn't know of Indigenous women in tech, but she's going to reach out to see if there's more opportunities there. And again, Cara is part of the team that works specifically on supporting and celebrating Indigenous women entrepreneurs. So if any of you self-identify as Indigenous, she would be someone who would be great to reach out to. Any other questions or comments as we get ready to wrap up the discussion? Catherine, I've run out of runway, so I don't see anything else. I don't know if there are any other points. Maybe we can just go around the room, and I'll ask Rose, Darren, and Justine to add any final closing remarks they would like to make.
Thank you, everyone, for giving up your afternoon to coming here and joining us and learning about the DMZ. Again, if you do have any specific questions about the program or the DMZ or any of the other zones in the TMU network, please do reach out to one of us and we'd be more than happy to help.
That's great. And do watch for that follow-up email. Darren, Justine, anything else that you would like to add?
I think Rose summarized it pretty well. We're very grateful for everybody taking the time to, hear about these opportunities, and always feel free to reach out to us. We're very happy when we hear from members of the community that want to start their entrepreneurial journey. And if you have any referrals as well, happy to take them.
And Justine.
Yeah, I think Darren and Rose summed it up pretty nice. Thank you everyone for joining today, and I really hope to see you at any of the DMZ's future events. Thanks, Wendy, for organizing.
I'll just do the final comment to say thank you very much, all three of you, for giving us your time. The DMZ really is a jewel in the TMU crown, and we didn't have time to talk about some of the amazing success stories that have been incubated and accelerated there. Just to reinforce what we said, we'll put together a list of other opportunities that exist, not just within TMU, but the broader network. And I should have mentioned that there are also resources and supports available en français, particularly through RFAQ and others based out of the province of Quebec, but also for Franco-Ontarians. So we'll put that together as a resource, and really thank all of you for making time to participate today. Thanks so much.